Aloha, friends and neighbors. There was never a good war or a bad peace. Benjamin Franklin. We're going to talk about Ben after we get the sky mirror done. It'll be fun. Come on. Yep, this is program 1069. 1069 weeks I've served you. Never missed, you know. Probably going to have some misses here soon in the next year. Uranus is on my case. Enough of that. Program 1069. We're going to go through the last week of May and the first few days in June in the sky mirror and see what's coming up. And one of the biggies is that Jupiter is stationing. Wow, when Jupiter stations, you know what? We all laugh. Now this station is got a very interesting sidelight to it because Jupiter is on an exact 150 degree angle. They have all kind of names for it in astrology. The sign is this. It's obviously a seesaw. So when Jupiter's up, Neptune's down. Neptune's up, Jupiter's down. Now what's going to happen is Jupiter is going to stop on June 9th, see? And so here's June 9th, and it's going to get stronger and stronger and peak out then and go down. And then Neptune stops, goes stationary retrograde on the 16th. That's 7 days later. And so Neptune's going to get real strong, peak out on the 16th. These two guys are overlapping, and the trouble is they're on a seesaw. Only one can really operate at a time, see? So if everybody's laughing, they're not playing music. If they're playing music, people aren't laughing and clowning. Laughing and clowning is Jupiter stuff, you know? So you're either feeling very optimistic, a little overly manic. Jupiter is manic, Saturn's depressive. If you're feeling manic, well, Neptune is down on the seesaw, and your sensitivity is way down. Your Jesus heart is sunk to your belly or something. So then other times Neptune's going to be really strong as you get to the middle of June, and your higher heart will come out and your compassion. And Jupiter will go down, and enough of these lawyers and these guys all grinning and laughing. I noticed it already on some of the news shows. You got a whole bunch of people lined up, and they're just grinning and laughing and grinning, and all morning long. I get kind of tired of it. Anyway, little Neptune, please, little music. So they alternate, okay? And that's what's going on through the first part of June. Now, let's take a look at it day by day and see what's going on. The sun is in the middle of Gemini. There it is. And as you get towards the end of the week, the sun is squaring Neptune. When is that? That's the 4th. So with the sun in square to Neptune, that means it trines Jupiter. So Father is saying, I've had enough of these religious fanatic music, you know, pie in the sky, doctors, drugs, pharmaceuticals, Roundup. No, I had enough of that. I'm going for Jupiter, wisdom, the professors, you know, natural knowing. So the sun has put Jupiter up on the seesaw and blocked Neptune. And he does that just about the time Jupiter is stopping. So we know that on the seesaw, Jupiter's going to get a lot of time. You're going to hear a lot of people laughing, and you won't be real sure about it lots of times. Details. Okay, let's do some details here, Frost. The moon going around the edge of this planetary pattern makes angles to all these actors, and that's what gives you the mood of the times. The new moon here in the middle of Thursday, the 25th, squares Neptune. And that can't be Neptune. Neptune's at 14. What is that? Well, yeah, I did this on Mercury retrograde, so there. Neptune squares up here. So it's late Thursday night when the moon squares Neptune. There's confusion, delusion, you know. And that new moon is happening. So, you know, boo for Neptune. I can't believe the roundup mania going on. There's people around me who won't stop. I tell them they're hurting my lungs. They won't stop. I need a lawyer or somebody. Yeah, a lawyer, Jupiter. Maybe some wisdom will come out. Anyway, the moon's in Gemini here for this new moon. And the square to Neptune, the confusion starting, bad smells. I don't believe in nothing. And by Friday, you're probably pretty fed up because on Friday, the moon in Gemini opposes Saturn. That's after dinner or after lunch, probably a little before dinner. And you're going to be bummed out about these people in suits and ties and the bankers and the regulations and the laws. Yeah, and then here's Mars. You're in the Mars zone already. So Friday, you're kind of PO'd about everything. Ask yourself what you're protecting. There's fires, there's fights, there's hot tempers, there's road rage. Friday night is not a good time to be out, frankly. High accident rate. Not fooling. Fires and fights. This is Saturn here and Mars. The two bad guys lined up. And the moon goes by Mars. That's who we're thinking of. Sports guys having a fight on the field. Well, Mars already hit the USA Mars. Maybe this is part of the fight I've been talking about. You'll see Friday night, the 26th. Saturday, the 27th, the moon goes into Cancer. Everything cools off. There's some water around. But there's a square to Jupiter about midnight, 1 a.m. in the morning, Sunday. Too much laughing, too much loudness, overdoing everything. Eek. Funny thing is, an hour or two past that, the moon trines Neptune. And there's a beautiful quiet and sweet music, and people are humming and singing, and the mind quiets down. But you'll probably sleep through all of that. Sunday, in the middle of the day, the moon's opposing Pluto, and that's no fun. There's cops and sirens, and police are shooting people for no reason, it seems. And you won't like that. They'll be in the paper and on the news Sunday. So consider Sunday, you know, kind of a continuation of Friday and Saturday. This is a lousy weekend. You come right down to it. You'd be lucky to have some music and poetry and religion here on the Neptune-Mercury sextile and trine. Got to squeeze it in, you know, really late Saturday night, midnight, 1 a.m. in the morning, Sunday morning. That's the time to be in church. The rest of the day is kind of violent. And here's Sunday night, here's the square to Venus. There's no beauty, there's no love, there's no sweets. And here's Uranus kicking up its heels. So you're going to feel alone, and some of the ladies, in particular, the girls, are going to feel left out and have trouble, especially on airlines and Uranus kinds of things, trains and planes and cars and buses. And not a good time Sunday night. Monday, the moon shifts into Leo. Oh, a breath of fresh air. Monday night, here's the sextile to the sun. I'm getting stuff done. I got a plan. Hooray. You know, late Monday night, 2 a.m. in the morning, Tuesday, here's a sextile to Jupiter. All right. I got new ideas. I'm optimistic. Things change totally here Monday night, Tuesday morning. Nice. After that dismal weekend. Tuesday, here's your trine to Venus and a trine to Saturn and a trine to Uranus. There's brotherhood, there's love, there's traditional stuff. It's solid. Crystallize it. It's good stuff, whatever that idea is. Wednesday, on the 31st, the moon shifts into Virgo. It starts with a little nurturing, not too bad. But Wednesday night, about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, the moon squares the sun. Mom and Dad gave up. I'm not getting anything done here, doggone it. And Thursday morning, the moon's still in Virgo. It opposes Neptune. Now remember, Neptune's down on the seesaw. And so the tendency is to forget the bad smells and sacrifice them, whatever Neptune is to you. Don't be too tough on him. He's sensitive. Priest, artist, doctor, musicians. Pluto is there Thursday afternoon. A nice trine to Pluto. There's discovery. And you can talk about it. Here's the trine to Mercury. So a lot of good talk and discovery going on Thursday in the evening. Friday morning, still good for talk. But here's square to Saturn. Starts right away. You know, you go to work late. You're going to be late anyway. Time you get to the middle of Friday, from noon to dinner time, the moon squares Mars, and everybody's ticked off and they're in a big hurry. You know, ask yourself what you're protecting. Everybody's biting. Jeez, moon's gone into Libra. When you get to Sunday, the moon goes by Jupiter, and the sunny face of optimism is there. You know, everybody is so optimistic. When Jupiter stops, generally people have new ideas. And I used to use it to predict gold prices. When Jupiter stops, the gold, what do you guess? People sell their gold to go out and do new things, so the price of gold goes down. So you'll see that Sunday. Well, the market's not open then. But a lot of optimism, a lot of fun, a lot of clowning around here on Saturday. A lot of that, aha, now I see it clear kinds of stuff going on Saturday. Good time to meditate a little bit. Late Saturday night, just past midnight, the moon squares Pluto, and there's weird noises around. Try to ignore them, get some sleep. Here's the Venus-Uranus conjunction now, and that's Sunday night. So the moon's opposing Venus and Uranus. The girls are acting up. The ladies don't want any part of it. Mars comes along late Sunday, the hero, you know, the young man, he fixes it all, settles everybody in. There's some settling here Sunday after lunch from the sextile to Saturn, but the disruption from the sugar and the young girls and the media and the noise is going to be solid right through till late Sunday, when there'll be something you have to do to fix it all. Jupiter, huh? So circle these on your calendar. You know, the 9th, that's when you'll learn a lot about Jupiter. You know, you read up on him, the Greek and the Romans, and every culture has a Jupiter, the great benefic. And Neptune, oh boy, every culture has a Neptune. I don't know about this because you can't see Neptune with the naked eye, and yet everybody has a Neptune, so-called god, Poseidon, Neptune. Anyway, that's when you want to get to know him, is on the 16th, when he stops. Read Jesus. He's a really good Neptune. Benjamin Franklin. There are some that say I'm a reincarnation of Ben. We share the same sun, 26.5 Capricorn. Venus, 4-5 Capricorn. A lot of our charts are kind of similar. And I've kind of paralleled his life in many ways. I was very involved in fire safety, Honolulu, trying to organize the fire departments into a cohesive thing, military, industrial, civic. I did a lot of things that Ben did. Here's another image of Ben. He does have Venus and the Sun in Capricorn. He is a lusty old goat. Now, he was an astrologer, a very good astrologer, as I'm about to show you. So this is the way I know Ben. Hard at work on his almanac, counting the squares and the trines, predicting the weather a whole year in advance by how the planets were aligned. That's what he did in his almanac. This is how I think of Ben, my brother. This is his famous fur cap. You know, he was more famous in France than he was in America, although, you know, on the most prevalent book in America at the time was the Bible. The second most one was Poor Richard's Almanac. That was Ben Franklin's little book. Every year he published it for 25 years. In France, he was known as a natural man, like, you know, Thoreau and Emerson and the heroes of the French Revolution, the natural men. And so he never put on any airs, and his fur cap was worn in France, and people flocked to him when they saw him. I mean, he was a real hero to the French Revolution. The Revolution had much to do with Ben Franklin, as our Revolution did. Yep. Let's face it, it was Ben that took out a lot of the most famous line of all, you know, was, "We find these truths to be self-evident." That's Aquarian thinking, Ben. Of course, in our, quote, modern world, shame to the age we live in, Ben said, for throwing out astrology. But in our modern world, he's known a lot for his humor. Old boys have their playthings as well as young ones. The difference is only in the price. Ben didn't do these illustrations. These are Norman Rockwell's from a book. The first book I found on Ben Franklin's saying was all about his sayings and humor, not one word on astrology. They even didn't call it astrology. They called it astronomy. And back in those days, we're talking 15 years ago, I didn't notice on these pictures they were holding the almanac. I finally got a hold of a real almanac just a year ago, and 1733 is when he started publishing them. Neither a fortress nor a maidenhead will hold out long after they begin to parley. Most of you will know this one. Fish and visitors stink after 3 days. Of course, Ben was always there battling the king, huh? And they didn't like the royalty much, like the French Revolution, American Revolution. They figured the age of kings was over. It's the age of man. The royal crown cures not the headache. In other words, kings are just like people. They get headaches too, huh? Ben had a subtle way of teaching, very subtle, you know, a wry sense of humor with a little bite. The golden age was never the present age. That applies to our times too, doesn't it? There's more old drunkards than old doctors. Ben said, beer proves God loves us and wants us to be happy. Said man's best friend was a loyal old wife and a loyal old dog. Here's a beauty. One good husband is worth 2 good wives. For the scarcer things are, the more they're valued. Good husbands are scarce. He always makes you think a little bit, doesn't he? Love your neighbor, yet don't pull down your hedge. Cut wood, carry water. Here's a young Ben Franklin instructing a blacksmith how to build a better stove. A better wood stove was an obsession. If he had to cut wood, you know, he wanted to burn it efficiently. And that's what he did. He redesigned the old cast iron stoves. It wasn't that Ben championed alcoholism. No, just the opposite. It was a waste of money. The way that Ben finally escaped from his brother's sweatshop printing shop, you know, there was 10 apprentices or something, and Ben was one of them. And every morning they drank a quart of beer before work. Then they had a break at 9 or 10, drank another quart. Then they had lunchtime at 1 o'clock. They drank 2 quarts of beer. Then at the end of the day at 3, 4 o'clock, they drank another quart of beer. So what Ben did is he stopped drinking beer. He didn't put his pennies in the beer pot for all the guys to buy their beer. And he started saving his beer money. And the other apprentices didn't like that. Not because he didn't contribute to the pot, but because he wasn't drinking all that beer, he just naturally did more work. He was doing twice the work of all the other apprentices. And they had to tell him, slow down, you're making us look bad. Anyway, he saved up all his beer money until he had enough to buy his own little shop. Now, I got a lot of the Poor Richard's sayings from this book, which was a tabletop book and had none of the astrology in it, but just had, all of the wise sayings for each month. And it's really fun. I mean, you can just pick it up and read it like a Bible, and here's some wise saying that will teach you good. When befriended, remember it. When you befriend, forget it. Ha ha. Great souls with generous pity melt, which coward tyrants never felt. Oh boy. Who knows a fool must know his brother, for one will recommend another. Enjoy thy time well, if thou meanest to gain leisure. A flatterer never seems absurd. The flattered always takes his word. Always take his word. Lend money to an enemy, and thou wilt gain him. To a friend, and thou wilt lose him. Oh boy. Well, this is a great little book, illustrated and all. But you know what? They took out all the astrology. It's been a conspiracy. And the publisher even says the text preserves the typographical flavor, but they took out all the, important stuff. The astrology of it, the technical things. And the guy doesn't hardly apologize for it at all. Here in the introduction, he says, changes of the moon, prognostications about the weather, recipes, jokes, maxims, cautionary rhymes. Peddlers carried them in their packs. Excuse me, I wasn't looking. There, here's the publisher's note, and he doesn't even mention what's going on there. He says, they were sometimes paid for in wheat and potatoes, handful of nails, or a bottle of rum. But Poor Richard reached 1 in every 100 of the population. More than that. More than that, folks. And along with the funny little jokes, there was always in the introduction a real lecture on something that was educational. Here, look at this. He says, only the astronomical data and other factual pieces are omitted. However, the text preserves the flavor. Ah, boo, publisher. But at least he got something out. At least he got something out. Of course, he just added to the problem that nobody believes that Ben was an astrologer. Of course, he called himself Richard Saunders. Ben he never signed his own name to anything. No. So Richard Saunders was the so-called astrologer that wrote Poor Richard's Almanac. This is 1751 Almanac. But in the early ones, Ben apologized and said that, his wife was going to throw him out if he didn't make some money with his instruments. He spent all his time with the instruments looking at the planets. But here in 1751, he says, now the noble art, the astrology, he says, is dwindled into contempt. No other use is made of our learned labors. Find the best time of cutting corns. The mischief we owe in a great measure to ourselves, the ignorant herd of mankind, had they not been encouraged to it by some of us, would never have dared to deprecate our sacred dictates. But Urania had been betrayed by her own sons. Amongst them was the Newtons, Haleys, and Wistons, who condemned and abused her, contrary to the light of their own wisdom. Shame to the age we live in, Ben said. It's even worse now, Ben. Okay, here's a real almanac. He did this for 25 years. If I do my show for 25 years, I'll get to show 1300. But this is, it's pocket size, you notice. Very easy to carry around, and a lot of people did. And where is contained the lunations, eclipses, judgment of the weather? And boy, did he. Now, when you look at each page here, well, here's, first of all, how the astrology rules the body. You know, when the moon's in a certain sign, that's when you treat that part of the body. Here's a list of the planets, the 5 aspects. You know, he teaches you a lot of basic stuff. And here, every day, he gives you the goodies. Look at that. Here's rain. You know, and Jupiter gives rain. Huh? Here's sextile to Mars and Venus. And here's the sun entering Aries. Here's a trine from Jupiter to Venus. Here's a conjunction of the moon, Venus and the sun. So you see, he's listing the aspects. Here's Mercury and Saturn. And so here you get what the planets are doing, and the date and the time. And then over here, you get little wise sayings interspersed with, but here's windy but warm. So, you know, he's doing a lot of the weather prediction, kind of like I do. Up on top, the sayings of poor Richard. I mean, this is an amazing little thing here. The darnest thing, when I looked through here, what I found was these things about the 7 stars. And I started researching, and what are the 7 stars? Okay, the 7 stars, he lists the rising and setting of, and something called south. And they're the Pleiades. Yes, the 29 Taurus. Now, I have the Pleiades on my rising sign. So I want to know why he did this. Apparently all the people, you know, at that time knew what that meant. He lists the Pleiades like it was a planet. Wow, Ben, what are you doing? I got more research to do. I got to find out what he knew about the Pleiades, and I don't know. I won't give up until I find out why Ben Franklin listed the Pleiades.